I'm Mark.
Hi, Mark.
Hi, Elise.
I'm Elise.
I'm Nick.
Great. Now we don't know each other.
Okay.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah. So generally, we talk about what's going on in people's life at the time. So you've been working in recovery how long now?
25 years.
25 years. Holy shit.
Sheesh.
That's a long time. So at 25 years, what are the things that you like? What's it like having 20 years? I mean, is there anything you struggle with now that is different than?
I don't know that. I don't.
Maybe struggle.
I don't know that I struggle with certain things. And what I would say is that I've gotten more quiet as time has gone on. I say a lot less. I don't have any opinions about anybody's stuff. I don't get involved in people's business. I very much have gotten to that point at 25 years clean. Like, you do you and do it well or horrible. I could care less. But I stay in my lane. So
basically you stop giving a fuck.
I don't know. It's not caring is the opposite of love. So I wouldn't say that I'm unloving. I would say I don't get involved where I don't belong.
Not caring is the opposite of love.
Yeah, hate is easy.
Yeah.
People think hate is the opposite of love. Not caring is really tough.
More ambivalence? Like, you're just like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much, like,
Did you used to get in the mix?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I was all in the grip of it. Like, at one point in time, I was all involved in the drama and knew who was doing what and this, and I was all in on the grip of it. And then I had an epiphany about 15 years ago, which was I never speak about somebody unless they're standing right in front of me. Good, bad, or indifferent.
Why?
Because if I'm never the guy that said anything while you're not in front of me, it can never be misconstrued.
Well, that's a good point.
Right? So it's like the lack of gossip comes from never saying anything even if somebody's positive. Like, Mark's an amazing dude. Next thing you know, it's like, how could you have talked so much shit about me, Nick?
Yeah,
right? You hear it like
the game of telephone goes around.
Game of telephone, yeah.
The world
so
is
if you never
different.
say anything, you're like, oh, that guy, he never says anything about anybody. That's right.
So so when you go to meetings, you go to do anything, when do you share? Does it...
When do I share at a meeting?
I mean, do you just shut up all the time or what?
Most of the time. I mean, we've been to a lot of meetings.
Well,
too.
yeah,
You don't hear
I know.
me share very often.
Yeah, I know.
Very, very rarely.
But when you do, it's actually pretty good.
I think I gotta have... Okay, here's something else I've learned at 25 years clean. You gotta have something to say with valuable relevance before you open your mouth and just start talking. Like, we've become a society that thinks everybody has something to say about everything. I'm going to post a picture of my laundry machine on Facebook and go like, another load of laundry going today. No one needs to know that. Hold it in. Right? Hold it to yourself. You'll be fine, I promise.
Yeah, I think we were a little excessive,
So, like, in that regard, I try not to speak unless I really have thought, am I going to offend somebody? Is what I say coming from a position of experience on both sides of the field? And if it is, and I've been to the other side of that, then I have valuable experience. Before I just start opening my mouth about something or someone I've never experienced before, I'll reserve. I'll wait. I won't say anything.
Did we have a bad experience at the time that's taught you these lessons?
Yeah, for sure. Like, I don't have a specific example like I could run to right off the bat. For example, I wouldn't make a comment about anybody being in prison or what I know about prison, because I don't know anything about prison. I ain't never been there.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say anything.
Okay. So staying in your little circle of competency and only speaking up if you've had both sides of the experience, that's actually not a bad idea.
Yeah, and that doesn't mean I have to be a subject matter expert on something. But it does mean if I'm going to say something, am I really looking forward to being heard? Or am I really looking to be listened to? They're very different concepts.
Yeah.
Right. Being heard means I've got an agenda and I need you to hear it. Listening to you, or having you listen to me, means you're going to hear what I have to say, but there isn't anything that comes with it after that. It just stops at the end of the sentence.
Yeah, there's no... Because the first one's manipulation. I'm basically trying to manipulate an outcome to gain what I want.
Right.
Control and validation.
How's that? Is that coming in too hot at the beginning of the
No, I think that's great.
Great.
the
No.
cast? Okay.
There is no being here anyway. We just fucking wing it till we talk. So
Okay. All right.
So what's been going on with you, Elise?
I don't know. I was just thinking about that, what you were saying, Nick. It was interesting. I feel like, in a way, I've had to, like, in a vague, in general way, I've had to sort of do the opposite. Like, it's like, why doesn't Elise ever say anything?
Mm-hmm.
And even if I do have experience on something, or I do have something to say, my go-to is not to say anything. And I think, and I like what you were saying about intent, because I think for me, sometimes that the silence is not that same intent. The silence can also be manipulation, for me. Like, if you don't know what I'm thinking or feeling, then you can't make any predictions about me, and it's better to, like, not make anyone mad than to say my truth.
Yeah, so then you can keep yourself safe on the other side of it.
And you think that's bad or good? You're okay with that or what?
No, I feel like that's where I've been, and my growth has been opening my mouth more.
How's it going?
So, and speaking my truth, like, even when even when there's fear.
Even when it had so like basically having a hard conversation as opposed to staying quiet.
Not even like, it won't even be a hard conversation. It'll be something fucking small, you know, but it's just like, I don't know, I'm a people pleaser, I'm also an overthinker, and so learning, like, to not, you know, stay silent and think 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 about what I want to say. Like, I know what I want to say. I just have fear that keeps me from saying it. And it can be the smallest fucking thing. It can just be like, should I laugh at that or not? Am I close enough to this person to laugh at the jokes they're making in this group? Will that mean, am I a part of enough to join in this laughter? Like, something small as fuck. Like, it doesn't even have to be a difficult conversation. But just, like, being able to be authentic more.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I think there's a piece of just like I remember coming into meetings or rooms and seeing everybody, and they were talking and they're sharing all this noble wisdom and this righteous shit, and, you know, you want to be a part of it. But at that stage, all you have is mess. You know, I didn't have any recovery. I had a shitload of mess. So I just sat and shared about every messy ass part of the thing it was as an attempt to try to connect with people. You know, and there's this idea of sharing the message and not the mess. But when I came in, I didn't have any message. I only had mess. You know, and I do realize that for the people that were on the other side of that conversation, listen, probably zero value. But for me, for the first time, saying a lot of this shit out loud and not just keeping it all up in my head and having things wander around, there was a huge amount of value. Mm-hmm. You know, to actually getting things out and saying things for that I'm not just, you know, stuck in my own craziness in my head, that I actually said some of this shit out loud. You know, and then fast forward a little way down the road, then eventually I got to a place where I got sick of hearing my own shit. All right, well, maybe I should start working on some recovery if this is what I'm talking about all the time. You know, and then being able to come through and do that. But, you know, I think, because you called me on that a while ago, you know, because, like, basically working in the recovery field, talk about recovery all day, and when I go to a meeting, I don't want to fucking say anything. You know, and you were saying, oh, I don't hear you share ever anymore. You know, but I think the subtle, you know, even if you don't really talk about something that seems meaningful, I think it's like a subtle, like sharing on a regular basis is kind of a subtle pressure release valve. you know, that just allows things to not build up and stew in your head. It's just that little letting steam off on a regular basis. Because if not, for me personally though, I know if I don't, then shit just builds up and builds up and builds up until you're like fuck you, and you snap at somebody for no reason, you know, or you're just pissed off driving everywhere. And so, you know, having a little other side to it, and maybe that's just, you know, because I have so much shit going on in my head all the time. But
I feel like there's another aspect to that too, where it's like once you get some time or some recovery, you can almost like feel like you don't want to, like almost like a fear of sharing the mess when you do need to share it, because you're like this positive role model. Oh, yeah, you know, like people look up to you and people expect you to like share positive shit. And so I think sometimes there might even be like, well, I'm having a problem in another area of my life I don't feel like using, but I also don't want to share about it and have people think like, oh, they should be better than that already. And so I think sometimes that gets in the way.
Yeah, I've got to save face, save my persona of what I want going on. How much of your real shit you share at 25 years of recovery?
Not much.
Like your deep-seated shit that really, like, when shit goes sideways, do you share it in a meeting?
No.
No. Why?
You know, for a couple reasons. Like, first, when something really goes sideways in my life at this point, it's not a meeting-level conversation.
Yeah.
I'm going to need help from a professional or a therapist or something like that. Probably not the dude with 6 months clean who's trying to not jam a needle in his arm.
Okay.
Right? Secondly, my life is not on public display. Mm-hmm. I think we've actually, I mean, I'm not going to get all like, professorism about this, but it's like we've gotten to this point where we think everybody should know everything about what's going on. Yeah. I disagree. Yeah. Like, I get in an argument with my wife, it ain't going on Facebook.
Yeah.
The kid I went to elementary school with doesn't need to know that.
Yeah.
And doesn't want to know that, more importantly. There's a spiritual principle of silence our society has lost. Just everything's on blast, right? Yeah. Billboards, advertising, Facebook, dinging on your phone. Mark had lunch at Casa Maria today. Like, no. That's enough. So
I do agree with the idea, like, we don't need to share everybody. I don't need to know what your waffle looks like every single day of your life.
Right. So you asked me, like, when something goes sideways in my life, usually what happens is I will, because at this point I've been clean a really long time for me, I will call in subject matter experts on that item. Now, it might be, if it's a physical item, I might come to a dude who looks very healthy and go, hey, dude, I'm having an item. I need your help with this. Yeah. And get 2 or 3 people who are experts, right? I will go seek out specific advice. Here's the key that's definitely changed in 25 years. I'll take the advice. Now, by the time I get to the point of asking, I may not want to do his prescribed program, but I'm doing it. Or I'm not going to waste his time and ask him what it is. I don't pay a copay and go to the doctor to have him test me for cancer and then just go stand by a radiator joint all day. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, at 25 years clean, when something comes up, no, I don't share it publicly.
Okay. Where's the line? Where's the line in something that would bring up, in a meeting, like, oh, yeah, or in just generally a recovery community?
Yeah, like if it could harm me or others or anybody else in my life that I may end up having to make amends for later, I hold it back. I don't say anything. That's a change. I learned that a while back. Hold the tongue, right? If it's something like general that's not going to offend anybody, isn't going to harm anybody, and I'm not going to have to make amends for later, I'll say it.
Okay.
But it's rare. I mean, we've known each other 5-6 years. You've probably heard me share 4 times since we've been friends.
Yeah, probably. Maybe, yeah. Under 10, for sure.
Under 10, and we've been to 50 meetings together, call it.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A limited perspective.
Okay. Alicia, go ahead.
I like what comes to mind for me with that is like is like boundaries, you know, like sometimes we come into recovery and we have no boundaries and we're just like blah and throwing up on everybody, and it doesn't like there's no discretion whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes the boundaries are like in the other way where it's just like it's not even a boundary, it's a fucking wall, and we don't let it out to anyone ever. And that's kind of like one of the like extreme thinking, like addictive thinking in the extremes, like that all or nothing that I feel like people come in with, where it's like one or the other. And of course, it has to do with like a lot of like lack of self awareness and like trust issues and need for validation and all that stuff. And maybe like with time, the more work you do on that, you realize like I don't need to share this in a meeting if this is something that I need to speak with my sponsor about, because yeah, I don't want to drag anyone else into this. And I also like that intention, right? Like the intention of, am I doing this to get attention, or am I doing this for a solution, to receive a solution?
Yeah, and looking at, I mean, you both brought up something that made me just remember earlier, Kobe's like, I had such a lack of self-worth. Like, I just thought I was a piece of shit. That's why I did it. You know, and so always trying to gain, I mean, to me, I was sharing because I wanted to be a part of. And if I was a part of, then I might get some validation from you about who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And then I can go through and be like, oh, okay, they said I'm good, I must be. You know, but coming through over the period of time of doing steps and doing that, I actually started to gain self-validation through this process, and to be able to see, you know, who you are for who, despite who's there. You know, and I don't have to, you know, come and get every messy part of my life, you know, as a form of like hot wiring connection with people. You know, because you think your shit sucked? Let me tell you about what sucked in my life. My suck was way worse than that. You know, it's some fucking fake brittle popularity contest or some shit.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of like several of these items are a practiced experience. So, for example, like some of the beginning practice was not talking about people unless they're standing in front of me. Mm-hmm. The second practice was I literally had to practice for periods of time in my life. Mm-hmm. The thought has to stop right here before the second step as it comes out of my mouth. Most people that I engage with don't have a stop sign. Mm-hmm. They have a thought, bam, that thing comes out.
Yeah.
Right? Then the third piece is really like deciding what requires action from me and what doesn't. So, for example, like I usually hold before I make a decision a day or two, 3 or 4 if it's something big, mm-hmm. right? That has probably been the biggest benefit of my recovery in the last 10 years, which is stop reacting.
To not make snap decisions.
No, we don't react it. Yeah. Take the information in, sit tight, have a good dinner, mm-hmm. go to sleep, get 8 hours of rest, go to a yoga class, then let's start looking at possibilities.
Get up the next day. Yeah.
Rather than like, I'm ready to go to war right now. You know what I mean? Like, no, you're not. You don't have any of the information. Or any personal processing thoughts to have thought where you're going to be at the end of this decision, or where you might not be at the end of this decision, right? That took, I mean, I think for the normal population, that's an easier process. That was like a 20-year venture for me.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, I mean, think about the life of an addict. You know, there's no long-term thinking.
No.
There's maybe 15 to 45 minute blocks of time.
Yeah.
That my whole life existed
yeah.
in 45 minute blocks, maybe 30, 40 minutes.
Right.
What am I doing right here, right now? What's going to satisfy the immediate need I have?
Right.
Be damned anything. Long-term thinking was like this afternoon. You know, when people come in, what are you doing next week? Nah, fuck next week. I don't fucking know about next week. Mm-hmm. Because, you know, I mean, that opened up the door to like, how do we do all the shit that we've done? I don't care about ripping off my grandma. I'll deal with that later, because I'm only worried about the right here and the right now. So I just went from moment to moment to moment to moment to moment for years. You know, because there was, I mean, it's just so self-fulfilling in every single moment of my day until you just passed out. So there was no, you know, and you had to be reactive. I mean, and for me, there was a lot of time on the street where you actually have to live that way. It's a survival mechanism. Like, you've got to be that ready to respond and react to every single environment you're in. Which, if not, it could be, massively detrimental. But
Like, I'll give you an example, right? So one thing that's come up in the last couple of years that's been really, really passionate for me is living by the principle of mediocrity. I'm
What
not
does that
that
mean?
important. I'm a guy that works a job and lives between Austin, Texas and Albuquerque, New Mexico. And I get on planes and I go and I open up a laptop and I have a sandwich for lunch and I go home. But really what's going on in my life is not that big of a deal, right? There are people dying in
the
wars
spiritual
and whatever.
principle of mediocrity.
Yeah,
is-
just being okay with just being normal, dude.
Yeah.
It's okay to just be average. I'm finding so much peace in that in the last couple of years of my life, to not have to be one-upping somebody all the time of like, my Facebook post was better than yours. My job has a better title than yours. My car tires are better than yours. No one gives a shit. No one. So in my house, like my wife and I have been laughing lately of it's like, hey, you're not that important. Just relax. Just go to your job and come home just like you have the last 20 years in a row, and all of your feelings will be fine tomorrow. But there's no need to react on them today. Now that sounds kind of like, oh my God, how could you say such a thing? How could you say being mediocre is okay? It's delicious.
No, it is. I mean, there's a huge...
It's gorgeous.
Like, I'm not saying don't dream or don't have
Not
aspirations.
at all. I wouldn't say
But-
that either.
But the reality is, we live in this world where you've got to be, like, on stage, or,
For
the
sure.
goal should be being Beyonce or some shit.
Celebrity business people has been
Yeah.
a thing that's come up in the last 10 years. Like,
Yeah.
I'm Steve Jobs. I invented the iPod. I'm super proud of you. You're 1 in 5 billion. No one else is going to do that. That's pretty awesome. But for the rest of us, it's okay to just go to your job, sit in your cubicle, clock in, go outside, breathe in some delicious sunlight, and go home. It doesn't have to be more than that. We've definitely gotten into this, like, I gotta be better than that. I gotta be the best guy that does this.
Yeah, and to be...
No, you
I
don't.
remember we had a client in the program once, and her big aspiration was potatoes. She's like, I just want to go home and cook potatoes for my kids. Because she just hadn't done it for so long.
Yeah.
That, the simple idea of just going home and making a simple meal for her kids that she got back and is actually living her life without, sitting in a bathroom and go, Mommy, can we have dinner? And knocking on a door that, never opens, and dinner that never gets made.
Yeah.
Her big aspirational goal was potatoes.
And
I'll
she
never forget
probably is living an amazing life because the bar is so low that every single thing that happens is delightful.
that. Well, but I mean, is
incredible.
that a low bar, though? Or is it just like such a dramatic shift
It's huge.
to, to be able to show up in my own life and do simple shit?
Yeah.
Seemed like a dramatically profound change. I spent a long time living outdoors, and at the end of my using, it was just fucking so messy that actually, literally, even just starting to get into, a normal life was actually a little uncomfortable. The things that seemed like should be normal, I was just like, oh, this is a little weird. I mean, it took a while to get used to doing that and to accepting that, and not just striving for the bigger, better. I mean, the influencer culture,
Right.
where I've got 29 billion followers and this and that.
And they all watch me lace shoes today.
Yeah, or I mean, I'm not trying to knock social media, but it's kind of like personal advertising. Where's the post with the fucking Cheerios flying across the room and everybody getting up the way they actually look in the morning, when it's unfiltered, where you can actually just be you and don't have to look fucking perfect all the time.
And that's part of what I'm saying. Like, without having your life on blast all the time, what's happened is I've found more peace from within. I don't need it on the outside, dude.
Yeah.
Because the bowl of Cheerios that I did eat this morning was with me, and it was sacred, and it was private, and there was a little bit of milk that got on my chin, and I wiped it off without anybody seeing. And it doesn't need to be judged, because it's just the same as you eating a bowl of cereal.
You're kind of like a Zen monk.
Well,
With
I don't know
Cheerios.
about a Zen monk as much as it is just like the reality of, I feel like I'm doing better with less exposure. And at some point in my life, that may be totally different, right? But at this point in my life, I'm like, dude, you're doing just fine. Just sit tight. It's not that big of a deal.
So let me ask you both. If you had to name the top 3 things that were hands down the most beneficial things in your recovery to date, what would they be? Elise?
Well, a lot of, like, what Nick was talking about for me is mindfulness. And that is one of the top things, most beneficial things that I've had in my recovery, because it's like a feels at first forced practice of brief meditation where I have to think about, like, my fucking thumbnail. Like, what does my thumbnail feel like? That's interesting. Oh, I can feel, like, the pulse in my thumb if I focus on it enough. And that's just interesting. It doesn't have to be like, I need to get my nails done because my thumbs aren't good enough, right? It's not like, what's the next thing? What's going to be exciting? What's going to be better? And, like, constantly seeking, like, trying to create expectations and exceed them. And that is, like, addiction. And that is, like, the lack of being present is why everything feels so, or ends up feeling so empty. But I have to, like, make that an actual practice where I'm like, I'm walking the dog and I'm like, cool roses, da 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 da. You know, I have to be like, stop. I'm gonna smell it. Oh, this one smells different than that one. That's interesting. And just, like, get as, like, into the tiniest bit of a moment that I can, just to do it. And that has an impact on the rest of my day of how I see things, and can be okay with that, the mediocrity.
So basically slowing down long enough to see the world that you're living in and enjoy these moments and not be rushed to get to everywhere. You know,
And
being conscious
practice
about it.
interest in things that I naturally wouldn't show any concern to.
Okay. So being more mindful, being more present, and what would be the best thing for you? What's the best thing you've learned?
You know, I'd say the first one is to self-soothe. It's taken a lot of practice to find self-soothing, which means
How do you do that?
it doesn't take my wife, it doesn't take validation from my followers on social media, it doesn't take my friends or my family or anything else for me to go, dude, I'm okay with me. You don't need to be.
How did you do it? How do you learn to self-soothe? If I'm brand new and I come in and I've got 3 days clean and you tell me to self-soothe, I'm going to tell you to fuck yourself. What does that even mean?
Come see me in 25 years.
Well, okay, that's great, but what can I...
That's a cocky response.
Yeah, that's a little response.
Okay, what do you do to self-soothe? Couple of things. Like, the first thing I'd recognize, or a trained behavior is, this feeling is temporary. Whatever feeling that is temporary.
Okay.
It will pass. And I have to sit still long enough and not get distracted by anything to sit in that feeling and go, hang tight, Hoss. This won't kill you, and it won't keep you alive either. But it will pass for sure.
Okay.
It's a self-soothing technique.
Okay.
Right? So what I would say is stop reacting.
Okay,
Just
so
sit
stop
still.
reacting.
Just
to
sit
everything.
still. It doesn't require anything to just do nothing and hang tight. So one of the best lessons I've learned, a friend of mine that married me a couple of years ago, he called me and he was all freaked out about this and that and the next thing, about maybe leaving his wife and this and that. And I'm like, here's what I would suggest you do. Nothing. Don't say anything to anybody. Don't bring it up anywhere. Just do nothing. And then get up tomorrow and let's see if we're going to do nothing again, or if we've got some different feelings and we're going to take action in a different direction. So pause is super valuable, and our society says don't pause, go to action right now.
Yeah. So to sit still long enough to be able to see what you're doing.
Yeah, and that sitting still is an act of patience.
Yeah.
It could be months before you know what to do. Right?
Yeah.
But not reacting to it is probably more valuable than making a choice that harms you later.
Yeah. Okay.
The next thing I think probably most valuable in my recovery over all these years is to be completely okay with where you are and where you're not.
where you are and where you're not.
So where you are in your life with your idiosyncrasies and your character defects and your shortcomings and your assets and your benefits and things that are wonderful about you, I'm okay with all the good and I'm okay with all the bad. And I don't have an opinion on either one of it. I just leave you right where you are. You just be where you need to be and I'll be where I need to be. That's been really valuable for me.
You're talking with other people in your life.
And myself.
And yourself.
Yeah.
So taking the good and the bad with whoever you are.
Totally. And not having any feelings about it. Like this guy, I really don't like the way he talks. He's cocky, he's arrogant, and this and that. And that's okay. He can just be that.
Yeah.
It doesn't require any feelings from me. He can just be where he's at. And there's a lot of value in just going, dude, you're great where you are. For somebody, they love you for that kind of talking. I don't want to be the one that kills that. That's a high value for somebody.
Yeah.
It ain't got shit for value for me.
Okay.
We also don't need to be in a relationship. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like this, I mean, the 25-year clean Nick, I'd be interested to reflect back to the early version of you in a year and see what how your answers would have differed.
Totally different. Totally different. But I mean, there's a couple of life pieces there that have knocked me upside the face pretty good. Good divorce, being broke, not knowing where your next bit of business is going to come from that keeps your kid in a special needs school.
Mm-hmm.
I've been humbled by some of that stuff, which has brought me to some silence.
Yeah.
Like, the world probably doesn't need to know what I'm thinking.
Okay.
Okay. And then the last one for me would be most valuable thing in my recovery. I would say selfishness is underrated.
In what way? What do you mean?
You take really good care of yourself. Okay, I'll give you an example. I had this girlfriend, I don't know, about 18 years ago. She was a lot older than me. Like 15 years older than me. It was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Put me on a whole new track and trajectory of women. It changed my whole life. All the women I dated thereafter were sizably older than me by at least a decade.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, I'm a single mom. I'm in my 40s. I was like 27 at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And she goes, I'm a single mom. I'm in my 40s. I work a job. And when the plane is going down, it's oxygen to my mouth first and then to the child. Mm-hmm. If I'm not okay, he definitely isn't going to be okay. Mm-hmm. If I'm freaking out, he's going to want to jump out the emergency exit before it's time to do so. Mm-hmm. So selfishness for me is in my life, with my family, with my wife, now that my kids are launched, etc., I come first. Everybody else, numero dos. Okay? When I get me taken care of, I can serve everyone.
Yeah.
When my cup is empty because I did everything running around for you and you're not very grateful for it, I'm doomed.
Okay. So at least I didn't ask you your second two. What are the other two that have been most important? So mindfulness was your first one. What are the other two?
Well, that was interesting about the selfishness, because I feel like that has a lot to do with me as well, which also has a lot to do with like the people pleasing thing I was talking about. And so like a lot of my defects or whatever come from like trying to please everybody else, doing other things in other areas and not focusing on me. And I guess like if you're thinking about the negative form of selfishness, or like I guess more self-centeredness, it's like trying to satisfy, like act on immediate impulses to satisfy like needs that I feel right in the moment. Whereas like selfishness, I guess, is more like thinking ahead to make sure that I'm the best that I can be, and then that radiates outward. And a lot of times, like, actually, like, people pleasing, trying to take care of others, shit like that, is self-centered. It doesn't look like it, but it is like that manipulation, right? Because it's like, if I'm all up in your business, I don't have to like pay attention to my own, like, which requires more like thought and concentration and patience and maintained effort. And so I don't want to do it. I'm just going to like get up in your business and do things that you want. And then, like, when that doesn't work out, I can fucking resent you later on. And I'm still perfect then, you know? And so, like, being able to be like, you know, no, I can't go to that thing or do that thing. I have to do, I have to work on my steps because I said I was going to. I have to practice my dance moves because I said I was going to. No, I don't have time to go out to eat or whatever. And being like, well, that might hurt their feelings, but whatever. That's like what I have to do for me because I already said that I would do that because that's what keeps me sane. You know, so like staying accountable to that is really important to me, for recovery and sanity as well. Um, and then I think, like, you know, I really liked what Nick was saying about the self-soothing thing too, you know, and I think, you know, a lot of lessons have come like big upheavals, like big mistakes, or like, you know, because like that's how a lot of us come into recovery. You know, it's like we get fucking like shoved into the corner, and we don't, and we finally make a change because it's so fucking painful, and we don't see any way out of it. You know, and that's when we decide to do something differently. And I feel like everybody experiences that in recovery. Just it's just not with using anymore. It's other shit. And then like we learn how to make changes from there.
And she's frozen. So I haven't had that happen before. Anyway, now I was trying to think what the hell the three that are most important to me.
Yeah, let's ask you, Mr. Chairperson. Mark, what are the three most important things to you in your recovery?
Honesty was far and away the first one.
Okay.
Like being like tenaciously honest. Like at all times. Like I was so good at lying and just, you know, manipulating the world and my outcome to whatever I wanted it to be. You know, and it was
Recording
really,
stopped.
It was really hard to not to just get really super honest. I mean, even, you know, you go to the grocery store and not ripping somebody off, even though I'm broke and I can talk myself into doing it. You know, telling, you know, seeing it on my family and just being like, all right, this is actually what I did. You know, and, you know, the byproduct of that over the long term is it actually made me want to do the right thing most of the time.
Okay.
You know, not all the time, but most of the times, you know, I came through and was able to, you know, change the way I approach the world. Instead of doing it through manipulation and trying to get an outcome for myself, it's kind of more, you know, what is actually the right thing to do, regardless if it affects me or not. You know, seemed to be a bigger piece to that. You know, honestly was far and away the first one, and the other one is, you know, like you talked about hitting pause or being still.
Mm-hmm.
You know, to me, the only way I was able to do that is through, you know, exhausting the shit out of myself. Sitting still for me is incredibly hard. Like, just because the squirrels run rampant fucking in my head constantly. Just go, 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 go. And that's where, like, I love fucking hot yoga. Because you go into this room that's 120 degrees and you sweat your ass off and you fucking just basically collapse at the end of it. And there's this time of, you know, 5 or 10 minutes where you just lay there. Stillness. Absolute stillness. And that is probably... I've gotten better at it, but that was the first introduction to actually slowing the fucking racing thoughts in my head down enough to where I could actually sit still in my own skin. That over time has transitioned into, you know, I don't have to, you know, it's funny, so there's some people I was in business with a while ago, and, you know, came to her one day and she's like, "You're just a fucking asshole." And I'm like, what do you mean? No, I'm not. You know, and I realized that I was always waiting for my turn to speak. wouldn't actually listen to anybody. And so I wrote on my hand, fucking openly listen, reflect, and then respond with a Sharpie. So I could look at that shit and actually see what was going on. And I could be like, all right, look at it. It's funny how many times a day you'll look at your hand when there's something written there. And so I'd have to, I'd be sitting there talking to me, all right, wait, listen, reflect, and then respond. I mean, it's like, all right, let me listen to what you have to say. What did you actually just say? And then respond later. So it slowed me, it's what you were talking about, slowing myself down long enough to actually be able to do that. And Elise is back. A lot of the luxuries of the internet.
Yep.
So he was asking me the same thing, and mine were honesty and just figuring out a way to be chill in the moment and sit still. And, you know, the last one is just building some community. I think was probably been the most valuable thing I've done. So I just know I'm not fucking on an island unto myself. But so I got a question. I get really obsessed with thoughts. So I was trying to. Yeah, me obsessive with thoughts. So I was trying to think the other day. Is there anything in my life that's not just a story that I've created? Is there anything in the world that is there anything in your reality that is not just a story I've created?
Is there anything in my reality?
Is there anything in anyone's life that is not just a story I've created? I mean, for example...
Meaning you?
Any of us. Any of us, I think, the idea is we all create stories in our head. You know, for example, the most commonly believed story is this. I'm holding up money. This is a story, if you think about it. Now, granted, it's a $100 bill, but the reality is, in all actuality, what it is just a fucking green piece of paper. But we have all connected a story to this green piece of paper that gives it value. Right?
Okay.
So, you know, I mean, we can change it, we do everything, but if I was to take this 100 years or 300 years ago and, you know, go to Central America, they would see no value in this. No, this isn't worth shit. Because the story is different. So, I know this is a little bit of a weird idea. But is there anything in your life that is not just a story I've created in my head about anything in the world? Nick came in here today and he showed up because, he has pity for me or whatever. It's some story that I created. Can you think of anything in our life that is not a story that you've just created in your head around some situation?
I don't know that I'm that deep of a thinker.
All right, we'll try for a second. Or humor me.
I don't know that I don't really pontificate about anything. Okay. Is there anything in my life that's not a story I've created? Well, my whole life's a story.
Yeah.
And eventually the last page will be drawn and you'll burn me up and that'll be it.
Okay. So, if your life is basically a series of stories that I created in my head, those stories become what I would consider my reality.
Okay.
Okay. But if my life sucks and everything I did was a story that I created, I can change the story to whatever I want as a long-term goal of it. So, like I talk to a lot of people that come into our program and this sucks and everything sucks and my life is horrible. Okay. How do we change your story? Yeah, there may be aspects of your life that suck, but, coming in with the predisposition about what things are, I mean, a lot of times I think we take limited pieces of information and fill in the middle with what we think it is, but that shit may be inaccurate or it may not be, something that serves me.
Lisa, I'm going to have to punt to you on this one.
It's just like our brains are like computers, right? Like they can only predict based on information they already have. So if all the information I have is like really negative circumstances in my life, then my story or my prediction for what's going to happen in the future is probably going to be negative. And that's just a natural computation that my brain has made based off of all the information that it's been pulling in over all these years. But I think the problem is the belief we put in the story. That might have been a natural prediction. Last 20 years were shit, so tomorrow's going to be shit. But, okay, I see why I would think that, but I need to take a step back and evaluate that for how truthful it is. Tomorrow might be shit for sure, but like it might also not be. And as far as how is my story helping me, like is it helpful for me to like go to bed thinking tomorrow will be shit, waking up assuming tomorrow will be shit? Probably not.
I mean,
Like if it's gonna be shit, it'll be shit. But like if I have, an open outlook, or if I try to examine, like, what are the facts? Well, tomorrow I have work, I have dance, I have a meeting. None of those things are shit in and of itself. So why am I making that story? And it probably doesn't serve me to go into it with that in my head. So like, I feel like in recovery and this whole like what we've been discussing about taking a pause and taking a step back, like we're able to actually do that, to be like, this is a prediction my brain is making. It's not necessarily true or useful, and I can choose something different if it will serve me better.
yeah, I mean, you can look at most of my life. I never thought I would change. I never thought I would stop using ever. I was convinced of a story that it was like I will use forever, until I got to a place where I was like, wow, I started to see a different possibility and change the story around it to what it is. But it's a longer rabbit hole we can go down on a different day. I think we're getting down to the end of our time. But, I always like to kind of what do you think about the things we took away? I mean, I love the ideas that you guys say, both you guys agreed upon, selfishness being important, or self-preservation towards what your needs are that serve the life you're in, being mindful, being honest, taking some time to look at the things you can do, as you're working on recovery. So thanks, you guys. I appreciate the time you took today.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Bye.
Bye.
All information and other content supplied or communicated in or through this video is for general informational purposes only and does not nor is intended to constitute legal or medical advice. Any viewer of this video should contact his or her own attorney, doctor, or other applicable advisor or practitioner to obtain legal, medical, or other applicable advice with respect to the accuracy, reliability, or potential application to such viewer of any matter discussed or portrayed in this video. Please do not act or refrain from acting in any way based on any information or content supplied or communicated in or through this video. The views expressed during this video are those of the individual presenters only and not those of Choice Recovery Path LLC or any of its customers, suppliers, or affiliates. Any liability with respect to actions taken or not taken by any viewer based on any information or content supplied or communicated in or through such video is hereby expressly disclaimed. All such information or content is expressly provided as is and free of any representation or warranty of any kind.